Well, welcome everyone to the virtual Eastside Freedom Library. I'm Peter, the co-executive director, and we're delighted to be collaborating with Andrea and Akoma and their project to bring together people with firsthand experience about mutual aid here in the Twin Cities during and since the uprising. We're very happy to be able to provide a platform. I want to encourage all of you, if you're not already hooked into the Eastside Freedom Library, visit our webpage, go to Get Involved, and click on Join Our Mailing List so that you can find out what else is going on. We're really honored to have these folks with us today, and I look forward to learning from them. I'm going to turn things over to Andrea and Akoma. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. I can give a quick introduction to myself and to our project and let Akoma take it from there. And then we'll also be asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves before we get started. So yeah, my name is Andrea. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a public historian, an aspiring public historian in training at the U. My classmate Akoma and I are working on a joint public history initiative called History for the Future. Our goal is to look at the history of mutual aid in the Twin Cities and to ask how learning from history can help us do work for building radical futures of community care. And so, yeah, we are organizing this panel in order to speak with local Twin Cities mutual aid organizers who have been very personally and deeply involved in this work and putting a lot of thought and energy into it. And we're here to ask them questions and learn from them. The last half hour of this panel will be a Q&A where Peter will kindly be taking any questions typed into chat or like raised on Facebook that we'll be filtering and asking our panelists to consider. And so, yeah, Akoma.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. My name is Akoma. I use she, her pronouns. I am also a public historian in training. And yeah, I'm really interested in learning how mutual aid projects work together to, meet people's immediate needs and basically just to learn a little bit more on why people don't have what they need. So I'm interested in getting into this conversation. I do want to acknowledge that the University of Minnesota, which is a sponsor to this panel, and just all of us, we are all on Dakota homeland. So thank you everyone for joining in. We're going to do a quick introduction of all of the panelists. Sheff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Akoma and Andrea, for having me. And thank you, Peter, for hosting this via the Eastside Freedom Library. My name is Sheff. I use they, them pronouns, and I work as a donor organizer or fundraiser at SATOL. But we were all doing different things last year. And in connection to mutual aid, I was working on the Minnesota Immigrant Family Fund, as well as distributing supplies out of the SATOL building. And those are my two main ways of plugging into mutual aid. And I'll kick it to Carmen because Carmen is in the same building with us.
Indeed. My name is Carmen Means. I'm the executive director of Central Neighborhood as well as Bryan Neighborhood. And a personal plug, I'm also running for City Council Ward 9. And so as Sheff before, we're right, pronouns, Black, anything said with love. We did have the amazing responsibility and the pleasure really to serve our community through mutual aid. We popped up a emergency food shelf that I believe, Sheff, you said about 2 months. We were about 2 months strong. Yeah, about 2 months strong. And so, yep, I've seen the power of mutual aid and what happens when the community engages. So I anticipate and I'm very excited for this conversation. I will pass the mic to, has Jay spoken yet?
Hi, my name is Jay. I'm involved in a lot of different things, but I currently just got a job at the Due North Foundation running their community market. And I also have organized over the past like almost year, 8 months or so, with Candyman, which is a group of basically 20 somethings who randomly got involved in mutual aid, and we're still going strong at MIA out of CTC's space. So yeah, I will pass to Rachel.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Sure. My name is Rachel Nelson. I go by she, her, and I'm one of the organizers for Twin Cities Relief. We were born out of the George Floyd murder. We spent 32 scary, beautiful, wonderful, crazy days in the Speedway parking lot down at the George Floyd Square, feeding everybody all day and all night and giving out essentials. And we all accidentally started Twin Cities Relief, and we've continued now into the summer. We've had all the marches, and we've been doing events all through the winter, and we're just turned into a family who's devoted to providing our community with the nourishment and essentials that we all need to stay well and continue our fight for racial equality and civil justice. And so I will pass it on to Roxxanne.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I couldn't find my arrow with my mouse, but hey, everybody, this is Roxxanne. And well, I guess I've been around doing organizing. I learned about organizing about 10 years ago. So I've always been an activist in my life as a child and as an adult, but kind of got a little more intentional about 10 years ago. And when I think about all the mutual aid or different mutual aid things that I've been a part of, I never really called it that. But I guess I was in the mutual aid business of giving people whatever they needed. So whether that was training, whether that was rides, food, emotional support, finding other people to hook up with them if they just needed somebody with a specific expertise. So I think, yeah, I mean, I can't even describe to you the many things that I do. Sometimes I don't even remember because it's too much, but I just pretty much answer the phone and whatever somebody needs, we figure it out. So that's how it's been for me for the past 10 years. I will pass it to who hasn't went yet.
Oh, that's it, Roxxanne.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for that great introduction. So yeah, let's jump into the conversation. Kind of why does everybody, I guess, why does everybody believe that mutual aid is important, and what is the relationship between sustainability and mutual aid for you all?
Mutual aid, I mean, for us, for Twin Cities Relief, when we started out at the Speedway, it was a necessity. This was, you know, as it's been around for forever, for us, it was not ever something that you could go home with, that families were not able to get formula for their babies. Kids hadn't eaten in days, everything was cut off, and we needed to provide for our own community. And, you know, so there was no going home. It was helping each other or they didn't have anything. You know, so the sustainability really is us. We got to take care of each other.
Yeah, I think that like there's a lot of kind of wondering about like, you know, how did people get started like when the uprising first happened? And I always think that that's like such a weird like question because honestly, I think for most people that I know that are like either still doing mutual aid or like did mutual aid or kind of got like re-involved in mutual aid, like as a result of the uprising, it was like, okay, like, damn, like people don't have grocery, like there's literally nothing open in the city at all. Like, what are we going, like people have to eat. And so kind of like what Rachel was saying, like people just kind of were like, well, people can't just not eat. So I think that like that's really to me, kind of like the spirit of mutual aid, of like, it's not about sort of a nonprofit model or a charity model of like, okay, like we mete out these resources to people that can prove, that they like really need it. Like, it's just like mutual aid is seeing the need and then like taking direct action to meet the need, to me. So yeah, I think that that's the importance of it. The no strings attached approach is really important, to me personally.
Absolutely, without no qualifications.
Yeah.
Can't be inclusive when there are qualifications on the need. There's for us, that was something for me, just kind of unlearning, or just not even trying to. Everybody, before, it was bad before George Floyd. So when that came around, everybody needed a meal, everybody needed diapers, everybody needed some toilet paper, everybody was in a hard place, and then you got COVID on top of it. So mutual aid is it's essential, because we can't rely on. We didn't have anything else to rely on. We only had each other. So there was going on. We, just like the group of Twin Cities Relief, there was 100 of us now that just take it upon ourselves, just like all the rest of you, to help when we could, and to give all of our free time to the cause and to the fight.
I'm seeing there's the question in the chat to repeat the question. And so we were just thinking about, the relationship between mutual aid and sustainability. And kind of the question that also Carmen and I had in mind at the start of planning this panel was the relationship between mutual aid and like long-term political organizing. Sheff and Carmen and Roxxanne, do y'all have anything? Yeah, would y'all agree with what Jay and Rachel have been saying?
I'll hop in quickly first. I totally agree. Mutual aid is about necessity and getting people what they need and showing care for each other. In terms of like the long haul, our movements are about dismantling the systems that are creating the material conditions where people don't have enough. And if there's not any relief or material relief or care built into our movements, what makes them compelling? So I think mutual aid is a very necessary part of our movements. And it's also about practicing and remembering different ways of like being in relationship with each other, and knowing that we can care for each other outside of the systems, the nonprofits, the institutions that are in our world right now. So I think it's also like a really necessary visionary piece of like, we can do this, we got each other. So just
dismantling the system that's so right, because it's understanding that it is the system, not the people suffering under it, that creates poverty, crisis, and vulnerability.
Yeah, I would say that everybody is on point in different ways. And I mean, honestly, I'm still learning. Like, there's not like a specific point, I think, in this work where you get to be like really understanding like the solutions or understanding what really things are. But I think, even as I'm learning and as I'm feeling burnt out, I'm saying 10 years in, and then last year was like, I don't know, it was like the cherry or the straw, you know what I'm saying? And it, sustainability is like trying to keep it going. And I think for me, what's missing, for me at least, is like, who takes care of the caretakers, right? I think that's the question that's coming to me when I hear the words mutual aid and sustainability, is like, yeah, how do we keep this going without burning ourselves out, and being prepared next time? Because I mean, I didn't get resources like when the shit hit the fan, you know what I mean? I watched a bunch of people get them though. And so I pretty much gave and shifted around information where the resources were. And a lot of us were training to basically, go to war. Like, so we were out here doing all that and, trying to get our permits to carry, trying to protect our communities. So it was kind of beyond just shifting resources and giving resources. It was like everything.
I feel that way with our group too, is that there's a lot of money being funneled in, and I didn't see any of that money as well, but there's the route of pressuring representatives to change. And we see it, see all these families that can't get food, like standing before me, and you cannot get vegetables. You can't, they're not in the store, they're not in anywhere for you to be able to get them. So how can I change that? And being able to make this sustainable is something that we at TCR, I think about all the time, because it's about not just pressuring those representatives, but by actually building new social relations that are more sustainable. So for us, we're building it directly with the farmers. We have it go straight to the farmers, and we go straight to the neighborhood, to your doorstep. There isn't no in between. It is getting it straight to the people. We set up straight in the neighborhood, so we can be sustainable. So we're not having to, split off. And I know that our whole group is broke after this summer. We all gave everything that we had, and it's the sustainability and is there now because we've built these relations that are going to keep going, and that they give it all too, and we don't got to rely on trying to get to representatives that haven't done anything for us in the past and ain't going to do anything now. So we got to set up those to be sustainable. We have to set up those new relations, the new hierarchy, the new system.
I think everything that I heard, I definitely agree with. One thing I want to bring pause to is the point that Roxxanne makes. She didn't term it like this, but basically, who tows the tow truck, right? So everyone on here has, the tow. We are the tow trucks in many spaces, not the only ones, but definitely some of them. And so with that, the sustainability really comes in being able to answer that piece. We're not talking about something that's outside of fat. If we really want to be honest, it became, regardless why people gave, but mutual aid is now the sexy word of giving. You know what I mean? It's like a fad word right now. And I'm really leery of fads, because fads come and go. We know there was a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals that levied up, and they made a whole lot of money off of this whole thing called mutual aid. Evangelical churches stepped in. It was their opportunity to be the messiahs that they always come. And I can speak that because I come from the church world. It's kind of like family business type of deal, but it was their time to kind of shine, to do the work without doing the work, to fund the work without doing the work. So there was a lot of different things that we have to really be realistic with, because a guilty heart only lasts so long. A transformational heart that really understands the weight of how we carry this thing early, that's the longevity of the work. And so how do we realign ourselves and really come with the realization that what we received during the uprise really was part of guilty work and a guilty conscience, but yet it's still for necessary people, because needs are still here, needs are still formed, and Corona did not go anywhere. And the uprise has just shifted. It has not changed. It's not disappeared. And so with that, sustainability looks like the building of relationships. It looks like what we kind of seen was the shared power. I believe that shared power during that time was done twofold. It was the giver and the receiver. It takes a lot I'm a mother of two, for one, and I've had to go and say, I need. That is necessary in this exchange. So we've seen a shared power, a humility that we had not seen before. So sustainability is not just, I would say, a question. It is a longevity of an undoing, because the needs again has not changed. But how do we do that? That's an exploring space that we're going to have to be able to fight through and get through. And for the purpose of not giving this falseness that your needs was meeting your needs was an act of a fad, versus meeting your needs was an act of us restoring and healing our own community. So we owe that to ourselves and to our community.
I think that George Floyd murder, like you said, really brought in so many people from all over the world. I know that people from all over the world, all over the state, were coming in to just wanting to help, just wanting to give anything. And it very much feels like, okay, you have 2 hours, but how can we make this for the cause instead of just for you? Or how can we, put these white fists with these black fists and make this right? And that's definitely a struggle that I'm learning and trying to be conscious of, as, we're trying to change that stigma of what we're doing, the stigma of, like we like to do the barbecue. It's not a handout. You're not waiting in line for, something. It's our people, it's our community, and it's mutually beneficial. We're mutually helping each other out of this.
I wasn't too impressed with corporations and people, and especially white people, who started to give all of a sudden. Like, for years, there was no money for anything. And it was like, no, we don't have the money. And then as soon as a Black man died, it was like money came from everywhere. It was like, where did the money come from if we didn't have the money? And then, like, you know, you see a lot of like corporations like Excel and different places within the system, different commissions that are now like, what do we do? You know, what do we do? How do we help? And it's like, why are y'all helping? You know, sometimes, you know, I just question a lot of where the money came from a lot, and wondering, you know, I don't want to have the answers for these things. I want to ask these questions. Like, where did the money come from, y'all? And
I feel the same way, Roxxanne. And it was something that personally, I wanted no hands on it. I wanted nothing to do with it. I want to be far away from the money, still do. We don't even take in donations, don't let jars out, no, none of that.
well, no, I mean, we needed the money. It is what it is. But I'm saying, what, like, where did it come from, and what were their intentions with it? Did they send it to dismantle us? You know, did this come from different corporations, like, or different, you know, I don't know. I just want to put that out there, that I think that when we talk about sustainability, that we think of where the origins of this stolen wealth came from, and like, how are we going to be in the near future? How are we going to hold people accountable? Because like the money, they got hella money. It's stolen, and like it only shows up when one of us dies. Like, we need to figure out why that is. Like, why do we only get valued when we're dying? Why aren't we valued when we're living?
I mean,
the transparency of money, I think, was something that's going to be continued to be talking about too throughout all this, so, especially all this money that was brought into Twin Cities.
yeah, I think that like money is always hard because like, we need money to like do stuff. Like, we can't just, it's unrealistic to be like, well, we just like won't ever like use money for anything. Like, how is that supposed to work? We all still live under capitalism. Like, we all still have to find some way of like getting the actual supplies to people, and it's not always practical to get that for free. I mean, I think that there was a lot of really cool stepping up by like smaller local businesses that was nice, but like ultimately, like, money is still how we pay for things. Like, we still have to live in like the society that we live in. And so like, yeah, I think that like money was really tough for us at CAN because we're not a nonprofit. Like, we're just a group of people. And so like, we didn't get any of that like CARES Act money, for example. Like, we weren't eligible for it. And so like, we also had to, you know, rely on like going to the store, like to physically buy stuff from like a Target. And we were like, of course we don't like doing that. Like, we would rather not give money to this corporation, like, but people still need food. And so it's like this really hard place, I think, that a lot of people are in. And it's not like being tied to the nonprofit industrial complex is better. And so, yeah, I think that money will always be like an issue, but I think we do have to think about how we can at least use those funds in a way that isn't just, I don't know, like lining the pockets of nonprofits, like people have been saying. Like, it's hard for me, having just started working at a nonprofit, but like, I also have to eat. It's like, yeah, it really sucks. Like,
I'm in the
we
same
have
boat
to like
too.
make these decisions.
And
Because
I agree with you 100%. I'm sorry, Rachel.
no, go for it. I was just going to agree 100% too.
I definitely, I hear you, Jay, and I agree with you. And Roxanne, I hear you too. I just want to make sure I honor that and speak to that. And I get so tired of being in a place that we have to choose between the lesser of the two evils. And that is a perpetual place that we are in that's very complex, especially when you're fighting and showing up on behalf of your people. And so the other part of that, though, is what I've noticed working in the nonprofit world so long. We have this thing that we have to sometimes choose between being right or winning, right? And it may not be fair, but nevertheless, that's what it is. So a lot of times when we are so focused on being right, we miss the win and vice versa. At this time, doing mutual aid, now don't get me wrong, all money is not good money. You hear what I'm saying? Let me say that again, just to be clear. But it was kind of like, in many cases, F where this money is coming from, baby girl needs her rent paid. And so it was about really winning. How do we keep the roof over their head? You know what I mean? I'll go back and swing on you later. But right now I need to make sure that folks ain't hungry. I need to make sure that after this, that people are secure as far as housing is concerned to the best of my ability. And so all the logistics and it wasn't even about putting like one's ethics or morals on hold, but it was about really trying to secure the win for people. And unfortunately, when you are in the nonprofit world, you often are in this battle within self. And again, all money ain't good money. Some things should be told a hell no to, right? We just not gonna rock and roll that way. But I wanted to be very careful and just conscious about this whole notion of majoring on the minors and then minoring on the majors. You tell a person that you had an opportunity to feed them, but then the money came from XYZ, so you told them, no, that's a problem for me. I could have got your rent paid, but since it came from them, I told them no, so I'm gonna have to figure out something else, baby girl. That's a problem for me when you're looking at that. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, in this capitalist world, we are often put into those places. And so when you're operating on behalf of the community, it's like a heartbreak. It's like a constant fight. It is a choice between the lessons of the two evils. And that's just a place that you constantly arrive in until we form a system that we don't have to choose evil, because evil is still evil.
Yeah, I want to make sure people understand that I say, go ahead and get the money. Like, nobody's saying don't take the money. I'm saying, where did it come from? And is it sustainable? As in the question of like mutual aid and sustainability. Is it sustainable when we don't know where it's coming from? And it only comes in these types of ways. So in my opinion, I think we just have to ask more questions.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add too, like, I think that the whole question of kind of like celebrity money too really came up over the summer, and like who was getting that visibility and who wasn't was very interesting. And like people who, I think that there were people definitely who capitalized on it for personal gain. Like I think that that's maybe unavoidable in a situation as far reaching and as big as this uprising that originated here. But I do think that we have to, like, even as we recognize that, like, yes, people need money, we still have to like recognize a certain amount of like disingenuity or like just like continue to hold especially like these really visible groups accountable for how they use their money and who they deem worthy of like receiving money from them and like how they redistribute it. And like I guess this is just me like loudly agreeing with Roxxanne about that, like, you know, it's such a hard thing in the space that we inhabit, and like we do have to keep questioning and like not get complacent, because I think we can all start really replicating some very problematic behaviors and replicating things that don't end up helping us in the long run.
Yeah, and to speak on the money issue, I totally agree. There's for me, it was ensuring that we were providing aid from the same group as people that were giving the aid, you know, and I wanted to make sure that we were the people who were controlling it and getting it to who was most affected. So in the beginning, when George Floyd, all that money was the root of all the evil. It was the fight for us down at the Speedway with churches, with gangs, with the organizers, or whatever is the root of all evil. So we didn't want any of it. we spent our own money. It's out of our own pocket. And just like our events throughout the summer were $1,000 an event, we spent that. But then, you know, I got 3 kids and we wanted to make this real. None of us thought we were going to be doing this after day 30. You know, it's just something we could not end, we could not stop. And so that battle of going for grants now and needing to, because we need to feed our kids and we need to be able to eat ourselves. And we're out here spending, you know, all day long and all night long on farms, driving 3 hours across the state to get this to people. We have to figure out a way that we can do both, because the guilt of, you know, that having to apply for grants and get that money as compared to trying to ensure that those providing the aid are from the same group as those giving it, you know, because we want to take care of our own.
Thank you all. After this discussion, I'm curious to know how you all see the difference between charity and philanthropy and mutual aid. I would say a lot of people this summer were, you know, really engaged in a lot of mutual aid work, and people might not be aware that they were. And like you were saying, with corporate organizations coming in and giving money and putting this performative act of like, Black Lives Matter, but it, you know, it just matters when somebody lost their life, right? Like how, like, it's disingenuous, right? So I guess my question for you all is how do you see the difference between charity and mutual aid work? Yeah. Andrea, did you have something else?
I'll just add a quick, like, a secondary question to that. So charity and philanthropy and mutual aid work, but then also the difference between mutual aid and activism. Like, I feel like there's almost kind of 3 different levels, or like 3 different tiers of like, maybe actions that people are taking, and maybe not even actions that people are taking, but ways that people are thinking about what's been happening and about how they have, you know, been or could be involved. And so, yeah, a lot of this speaks to me what Jay, you mentioned earlier, the no strings attached notion, and how this is so key to mutual aid. And I feel like, right, that, so thinking about charity and philanthropy, there's of course like the big difference with, I don't know, whatever expectations, right, like churches have. But then there's like activism too. And I feel like there is a difference between mutual aid and activism. And so I'm wondering if y'all could speak to that too.
I mean, I can start us off, I guess. Like, I think that's a really huge question. First of all, like, that's the answer. But I think that, like, to me, the difference between mutual aid is, like I was saying before, like that sort of like very need-based and like no strings attached kind of work that you do, of like, you don't need to prove that like you're bad enough off to like receive help. Like, you just show up and get help. Like, I think that that's like really central to like the difference. I think that a lot of times in the nonprofit industrial complex, there is like a lot of hoops that people have to jump through of like proving that they're, you know, bad enough off to get something as simple as some groceries. Like, I think that's morally reprehensible. Like, and even working in the nonprofit industrial complex now, like, it's only 2 of us that are paid in the organization that I work with Due Nord, and like, we talked a lot about, like, you know, we're not here for the nonprofit industrial complex. Like, we have to work in that, and like, that's where we are. Like, we've got to eat, like, you know, but also like, there are things that we just simply aren't going to do, and we're not going to require people to bring, you know, proof of income and all of this stuff just to get a box of food. Like, for what? And so I think that that's really the difference between that and mutual aid. And also charity, I think, makes a lot of assumptions about the people who are doing the work. Like, I think that a charity assumes that like, oh, I will never need this service, right? Like, I'm giving this as a gift to like other people. And it's like, mutual aid is like, look, like, I work at this like food pantry or this community market or whatever, and like, I might need to use this, or I have used this, or people who volunteer here are also people that like receive from here. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it's a very like cyclical relationship, and like a very mutual relationship. And then as far as like activism and the difference between that and mutual aid, I think that they are definitely related. I think that both are very political. I think that there are people that would say that maybe mutual aid isn't a political thing, but I think it absolutely is. I think that when people have their needs met, they are freed up to organize politically more effectively. And so I actually think that mutual aid is a critical part of any political movement, because you have to give people the space for them to have organizing capacity and ability, and like mutual aid is the best way to accomplish that, in my opinion. So I guess I didn't really answer Andrea's question, but like that's my answer.
Yeah, I agree with all that Jay already laid out. I think for me, it comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the panel about mutual aid understands that it's systems, it's white supremacy, racial capitalism, yeah, systems that are creating the conditions that our communities are in. And charity has a history of like both being tied to colonization and also like, yeah, exactly what Jay was saying, like leaving out some people and creating boundaries of who is like deserving or undeserving. That's like incredibly harmful, and mutual aid has that no strings attached politic. And yeah, one other piece, and Roxxanne put this in the chat, of like, you have to organize to do mutual aid. But this summer, when we were giving out like bundles of PPE to our members at C-Tool, we were also like including know your rights information and know what different laws have changed because of the pandemic. So we want to make sure that there's like popular education, which means like learning from our own experiences and sharing those and figuring out how to organize in our workplaces tied to like PPE and what we're giving out to folks. So we tried to like blend them together.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Definitely. I think the only things I didn't hear that I feel like there's some of the differences between nonprofits and charity work. Like you had said, Jay, about the hierarchy and that stigma that comes along with that, the giving and feel like you're giving down, or you're that kind of helping instead of it being a mutually beneficial. Also using the people power to resist any efforts instead of following government regulations. Like they're saying, like your mutual aid should be really educating your volunteers of everything in the social and in the fight beyond what you're just minimally doing, and giving things away without expectations. That's just the hugest thing. Instead of conditions, it's to support people facing the most dire, conditions with no questions asked. But it's definitely that that educating, and these are volunteers who have given up all their extra time and all their extra money to participate in the injustice and looking to further the progress of your movement. Oh, and also that members are, making the decisions instead of your members being your donors.
I just wanted to highlight something that Roxxanne mentioned in the chat, which I think is like to the point, straight to the point. Roxxanne mentioned that you need to do activism to do mutual aid, and charity though is giving and walking away and not really being active in the changes of the issue or the problem. And I think that speaks wholeheartedly to the very core of what mutual aid is and what charity is as well. So thank you.
Not just being, maybe not even just being inactive, but also maybe even being a part of the problem. Like when you think about where the money comes from, like you got people giving the money while simultaneously still creating the issues. So I wanted to say that.
Can you
I
speak more to that? Whoever just said that, I would love to hear. I know where you're going, but I would love you to speak if you would, please.
That was, you talking about me, Roxanne?
Yep, yeah, Roxanne, can you speak more to that, please?
Yeah, so since I'll explain it in an environmental justice way from what I've been able to tell, which I'm probably going to put myself here at risk because the same people who give money to this work, honestly, are the same people who ruin the river. Like, so I won't just say it's just, one group of people or one family, but the Mississippi River was, they stole it, and they banned people who were here first away from what was most precious to their environments. I mean, that's what they needed, was this river to create, their farming and their rituals and everything that was important to them, right? And in ways that would not just sustain, but be regenerative. The land is what's most important. The water is what's most important. But Minneapolis became very rich from exploiting that river, right? From stealing it, from taking the most important thing, and then they turned it into like these pieces of papers that they, took down trees to make. Like, what I'm saying is everything that they're doing to make this money is from exploiting the things that we actually need to survive. So I've been telling people a lot of this lately, like bringing up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how like our people are at the bottom of the triangle. Like, we don't even have the bottom base of what we need, the psychological, the air, the water, the food. Even when we're doing this mutual aid, notice we're just getting people's basic needs met, right? And it's like, if people weren't stealing the basic necessities of this land in the first place and hoarding the resources, we wouldn't need their money. And that's the thing, is we are bamboozled to think that that is what we need, when in reality, they are stealing the resources that, while we're getting the money. They're stealing the resources that actually really mean something. So that's what I was thinking about, was like, the same people who ruined the river are the same people who are now paying to clean it up. So that's kind of that's the best example I can give right now. Is I think that the same people who are perpetuating racist systems are the same people who are feeling guilty in the nonprofit industrial complex. Like, I mean, look, I'm a part of it too. Like, I work at these spaces. And I know that we take this money, and a lot of us do great things with it. We flip it and we turn it into magic, but I'm still kind of, I'm frustrated with the fact that these are, like, even the history of how it started was really based on like the churches and like who was going to kind of like do the charity work. And, even in the nonprofit industrial complex, I mean, it's still mostly white people working in it. It's like 90-something% white folks working, making this money, and that's what's creating their jobs. So like, if we didn't have these issues of people being exploited and lacking the resources that they needed to survive, we wouldn't need all these people. Like, they would be worked out of a job. So I don't know, that was long-winded, sis. I hope that was.
I'm so glad that you said that, because
Thank
I'm trying to learn how to resist all that, how to resist the control dynamics, hierarchies, the system affirming oppressive arrangements of charity and social services that are set up, and resisting that so we're not a part of the problem.
Yeah, I don't want to stress out nobody about it or put any pressure on you. Look, y'all, it is what it is. I'm saying we can't stop asking questions,
I'm seeing in the chat both Jay and Sheff, y'all spoke to like state and capitalist and corporations of radical movements. And I'm wondering if y'all could speak to how maybe, you've been feeling like this is happening with mutual aid movements in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, And I guess just to like briefly touch on the pride piece, because I do think it's related, I helped organize with TCC for J and a couple of other groups. Like I said, I'm probably in too many groups, but I helped organize the Taking Back Pride protest this year. And I thought it was really interesting how a lot of white gay people and LGBTQ people were like really upset about sort of the messaging of this protest, because it was a protest. And we were like, listen, like this is how this started, and y'all actually co-opted it. Like, let's not, you don't have the room to get up in arms about something that never belonged to you in the first place. And I think that it's similar to how a lot of white people are really upset by the language of mutual aid, and like really upset by people telling them that they are not engaging in it appropriately, that they are replicating systems of oppression when they do things like just throw money at like, you know, a couple bucks at Black people and then act like they've like done something. Like, we're asking you to do more than that. Like, yes, you should be giving Black people your money at every opportunity as a white person. Like, you absolutely should be doing that. But like, we're also asking you to like actually engage with like what part you play in this system and like start making steps to resist that. It's not enough to just sort of participate in mutual aid and, you know, like volunteer once a week and say that you are part of dismantling anything. I think that the education right now is also, I think, a part of mutual aid, a part of explaining to people how these systems operate and like why we're using certain tactics and why we're forced to use other tactics. I think is like a really important part of building sustainable movements, because I really don't think that a lot of people are necessarily engaging with this in a way that is sustainable. It's a very like feel good type model, which is inherent to the practice of charity, and it's not what we're going for at all. So yeah, that's also my long-winded response.
Jay, thank you so much. I just want to like hug you, like on the nose, like real talk, like on the nose. Like seriously, I think so we have, again, this wrestle of, you know, white folks get your folks, right? We don't want to educate, go and educate yourself. Well, the danger of that, anytime that which is the oppressor educates itself, it's like the power of connection is missed. And so it's like an ignitement of the power of the worship word, which we know white supremacy, written word rather, that's how the thriving happens, right? So I would never forget, and Sheff has been around me for a little bit, so Sheff knows this. I especially doing George Floyd, I just didn't have time to be nice and be all fluffy. I just didn't. So I was giving white folks the business from a very organic place. It's either ride with us or don't. And I remember we called a ally meeting and white folks showed up and we literally built these pamphlets, Shanae Herbert, a good friend of mine, on how do I show up in this George Floyd square? Like we literally had to do like a tutorial on like, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, right? And so, of course, when we're doing it, no, take that off. But when I tell you the response we got from our white allies, like, thank you. Because of that, I'm still engaged. And so it kind of took me from this space of, part of the educating, and I love the way that you just framed it, that education is part of mutual aid. Part of the educating has to come from Black leadership that is able to say very unapologetically, this is how you show up. It's like the retraining or the power of the critical thought, and also being able to identify toxic and harmful ways of showing up, because the person only knows how to show up how he or she knows how to show up, right? And so how do we balance that responsibility of not exasperating or extracting ourselves with this need to train the exhaustion of white folks, but yet it's still the ownership of, this is the time that we're going to have to do that, right? So that because I've had white people that show up that when I say genuine, but genuinely wrong. And so how am I able to give this space of grace of learning and undoing with hands wide open in a space that understands that with the re-education of the mind comes the responsibility of giving that education. And so I love the way that you have just did that. But yeah, education is part of that. It is. It really, really is. I love that. So for that, COVID hug.
I feel you so much on the race topic, because down at George Floyd Square, you know, those first 32 days when I was down there all day and night, and I'm sure I was talking to a lot of people that you were sending down their pamphlets, because it was a struggle for me too on how to teach them how to do it right. I felt, you know, I just happened to become the person that they would send people to I would put people to work, you know, where they could go and how they could help and where we needed it. And I have to speak on one of my favorite evenings down there, and there are many, but on the stage, I think it was John Lewis on the stage, and a woman had asked the crowd to put up your hand. If you're a white person, put up your hand if you have never talked to another Black person in your life. And I had seen almost every white person, mainly of the crowd, put their hand up. And then they asked the Black people, how many of you Black people had never had a conversation with a white person in your life? And a lot of them put up their hands. And it was one of the most moving moments that I did not understand was at that level. And I realized that in my power, I can help this. We had people coming from Canada. They were coming to come down and serve food with us for 3 days. They were coming from all over, these white people, but they really did come there with open minds and how can I do this right? Because I know that I'm part of the problem. How could I not be part of the problem? And that difficulty with how do we keep this our people, feeding our people and us getting through this and this healing, but also it's going to take every finger and every toe and every white fist and Black fist out here getting the job done.
Yeah, and like something else, since we've kind of like touched on it a little bit, like I think that there's been a lot of educating of like Black folks in this moment too, especially from like queer Black people. I think that like for me as like a queer Black person, like sometimes movements do feel hostile to like me specifically, because it's like you have like people who see that as like, oh, that's a white people thing. Oh, like, you know, only white people can be gay, which like literally what? But like, I think that like I had a lot of interesting conversations with like older movement folks, just sort of about like LGBTQ history. And like, that is also part of mutual aid, I think, of like, of helping us like see each other and like see who your allies actually are, as opposed to, I don't know, I think that there's a way to educate that doesn't sort of like coddle people or like compromise on the actual message. But I do think that like we have to understand that colonialism has stolen so much of our own identities from us, and like has stolen so much of our shared history and like shared struggle between like Black and Indigenous folks, for example, or like the fact that there are Black and Indigenous folks, or like queer history. Like there's just so much that has been lost because of coloniality. And like part of this work is I think undoing some of that and like showing people that like, okay, you have more in common with like this trans person than you do with like the police. Like just like, I don't know, I think that it's been like very tough to like have to do things like, hey, like maybe don't say transphobic things in this activist space, like we're not doing that, like, or like, hey, we're not going to try and like drive a wedge between like Black communities and Asian communities, like we have common struggle, that kind of stuff, like, and educating people on intersectionality. But I think that it's also been really rewarding, because I think that people have made connections that they wouldn't have made otherwise. So like the education piece of it is like both a blessing and a curse of like, it's really like wonderful, but it's also just like hard work.
I definitely feel from being from the country and having a lot of white friends, especially during the George Floyd murder, not knowing how to receive it and trying to be a median between the races. And I just I love talking to different people and bringing people together. And I think that that's something that's different with this time around, is that down at George Floyd Square, it's every race, it's just everybody in every kind of way, with the shared love and drive to the equality. And that just, it's different this time around.
Yeah, I'm humbled to be part of this conversation. Thanks for all of your wisdom that you all are sharing. Yeah, I had one other thought around like the co-option of mutual aid. And I think what Roxxanne has been bringing up around like ongoing asking ourselves the questions. And for one, I think nonprofits should always be asking ourselves, like, how do we vision ourselves out of existence? Do we have systemic change so this like material need is met? And I also, being part of like a large fund this summer, the Minnesota Immigrant Families Fund that ran through nonprofits, just began to ask myself, is this really mutual aid? Because we did distribute $1 million to families across the state, which I'm proud of, but it was slow, and GoFundMe sucks. And it took a while to transfer money, and it was so painful in a lot of ways. And it wasn't not like rapidly getting money to folks in the way that we had initially intended. And none of us had ever run a fund like that either. So there's a lot of learning. But that was something I was like, is mutual aid the right word to describe this? I don't know.
Thank you all so much for your thoughts so far. We did want to build in a 5-minute break before we jump into Q&A in case folks want to, run to the bathroom or get water or food. And so I have a slide ready to go that will just say 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 1:05. But before I do that, if anyone wanted to offer like final thoughts before we head into break.
Can we get the next question before break, or is that cheap?
I think Peter is going to be scouring through any comments and questions in the chat. I don't know. Peter, is there anything ready to go that they could think about during break?
There's a question about George Floyd Square, and how does that space connect? And I think that the questions that you've all been raising about multiracial relationships, and so given that there is now seemingly quite a threat to George Floyd Square, that there are people watching today, listening, who have questions about how you see that space relating to the dynamics that you're talking about. So maybe that's a good thing to take into the break and come back and talk about.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So back in 5.
5 minutes, 1:05, everyone.
All right. So the question we were considering starting with was the relationship between George Floyd Square today and the things that y'all have been talking about with mutual aid and kind of the risks of co-option, like corporate and state co-option, and the educational aspects and why that is important to mutual aid. And so, yeah, we could. I'm not sure if Carmen and Roxanne are back yet. If y'all don't mind typing into chat quickly or turning video on quickly, that would be great. But otherwise, we could let the other panelists begin sharing their thoughts.
I'll put the actual question in the chat,
Cool.
so you can refer back to it. Okay. So the question is, what is your vision of the George Floyd Memorial Site and the community going forward and their organization's role in that vision?
I'm sorry, I did hear my name in the background. I was still trying to like find my brush. I hadn't combed my hair, y'all. I'm like, where's my brush? Where is it?
You're all
Taking things slow, you know what I mean? This is like one of my first days where I didn't have to do anything, didn't have to go anywhere. So I'm like, that's why I'm like, I don't even want to be seen, y'all. I just want to be in the cut right now. But did y'all ask? I heard my name. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. I put a audience member's question into the chat, and I'll just read it off again. It's said, what is the panelists' vision of the George Floyd Memorial Site and the community going forward and their organization's role in that vision? I mean, I know this question is in response to the city council's meeting that they had yesterday, where they mentioned that, you know, after the trial that begins on March 8th, they plan to reopen 38th in Chicago. Do any of you all have thoughts on that, or how your organizations might be a part of that effort? Yeah.
Well, for me, I have felt like, as someone who lives on the north side, like I almost feel like I haven't been over there enough to even say what, you know, should happen right there. I think, you know, I play a certain position. Like as an organizer, I've built relationships with people. Like I'm willing to get in the room and have these conversations or these hard conversations with whoever they need to be with. But, you know, I also have been trying to stick to what I'm doing already consistently, like, and trying not to react so much. So I'm trying to finish the things that I've got already on my plate and that I've had before everybody started to do organizing. You know what I mean? Like I see sometimes we react a lot, and I want to make sure that if somebody asked me to support or to try to help organize that situation, of course I would be honored, but I haven't been, you know, and I've lived over South. Actually, it's not like I didn't have family over there, and it's not like I don't feel like I belong to that area. It's just that there's so much going on right there. There's so much energy there right now, and I don't know. I just felt like I would rather be asked for someone who has been leading over there to ask me that question. But just to answer it really quick, I mean, I'm down to support whatever the community wants to do at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm with the community, and I'm willing to be there at the table or wherever we need to be to make that happen. But I don't think it's for me to say what happens there.
And I know Rachel, not to put you on the spot, I know you've been doing a lot of direct action in that site. Do you plan on continuing doing work over there? Yeah, what's your future?
Yeah, I'm also a part of the George Floyd Square committee. In our meetings, we are absolutely not for the square opening, and we are not intending on letting that happen at all. There's a lot of organizations that attend these meetings and that are involved down there at the square, and I definitely feel privileged to be asked to be in them. Janelle being one of them, but definitely the plan is to rally the people, and nobody really wants to hear what the mayor's games have to say about any of it. But that is sacred ground for us, and the role that George Floyd Square plays in the world in this movement is much bigger than anything that any of us have to do. You know, it's much bigger than all of us. And our group, Twin Cities Relief, is so committed to the square. One, all the sustainable planting that's down there on the roads and stuff, that's our group. Andrew Jones is a scientist at the University of Minnesota, and he's one of who's been grilling with us from day one down there. And we've had the universities backing behind it, and we plan on making the whole area as green as possible, all sustainable planting and living. And this summer, we'll hopefully get up some greenhouses too, and be able to move north, but really just make that all green and make it all sustainable planting that the whole community can just grab food and the square to all be free. You know, we're counting down for the trial. This trial is, it's a big deal for us, and we're planning the 1 year anniversary as well. So there's a lot going on with the square, and there's a lot that that we use as you know, part of this movement. You know, if you look up hashtag no justice, no streets, or hashtag all Minneapolis, you're gonna find all of these groups that are pushing for all of this. And our group is certainly committed to that. We know that George Floyd Square, what it gave to us, and we were just a bunch of strangers that went down there and couldn't leave. And the knowledge that it gave to white people, to Black people, to turn all of the pain and all of the hurt and turn that into healing. To have an area that where no egos are, that it's just sacred ground, and to have these people really be able to, you can go to a spot and really be able to get on your knees and pray with one another, and it's a beautiful place. It's so much. There's so much there that you can't imagine. That are going on daily, and they do so much with that square. I know when I was just living there in that speedway for 32 days straight, every single day there was something so beautiful, and people from, you know, like I'm saying, John Lewis being down there, and people just it's too important, and it's too important to all of us. But yeah, I have to say that the mayor is going to be met with a lot of hostility, and it's not going to be something that's going to go over well, or going to go over at all. And Twin Cities Relief is certainly going to have a big part in that, or at least we're going to try our best.
There's another question in the chat that came in, which...
Can I weigh in on that real quick?
Oh, sorry, yes.
That's okay. Yeah. And so George Floyd is part of Central Neighborhood. And so that's where my world, and I live in Phillips. I live like 5-6 blocks down. And so with that, it is a very diverse community. So I have to make sure that I speak to that. It is a very diverse community. So the community is split, and we don't hear a lot about that. The community literally is split upon opening versus closed. And the stance that Central Neighborhood will take on that is the work has to be able to surpass whether the street opens and closes as we fight for justice. And I think that is where some of the community does support the closing of it. Some of it does support the opening of it. And so, but the bigger picture is gonna have to lie in the work. You know what I mean? And so there has been, as Rachel mentioned, there has been amazing work. I mean, literally, we cannot even list everything that has been done that has been a fruit of what the street represent, and even the beautiful art that's over there, all these connections that are made. The challenge is when we are connected to, it's not just a street, and this is something I've been screaming from the mountaintops. If there is not a connection to the work, you'll be heartbroken on fighting for the streets. And I'm not saying there's an either or, but I'm saying that how do we continue to fight for justice, right? How do we continue to fight for dismantling racism without forsaking what that sacred space is, but sacred space and sacred people. And so there has to be a balance of the both and. And so as to be able to speak more directly with the way that Central Neighborhood will continue to show up, because May 25th for us was not the beginning of the work, will be to be in to continuously be an organization that fights towards to do work through the lens of anti-racism. That will continue to be, and really to be even propel, even do it in a more deeper way because of May 25th. That's what it did. It made our roots, it demanded us to go deeper into that work, so that the street will not limit us, that we will hold that. We hold the community that supports that, and we hold the community that has a counter thought as well. But how do we do the work that will surpass all of that?
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other question that I wanted to point to, which came up in the chat, I feel like it's really relevant to everything y'all just were speaking to as well about George Floyd Square and how it's being used, and the questions that are coming up now about the future of the space. And so this question is, I'll read it out loud. Someone is interested in space production as a means of enlarging freedom movements. And in particular, they're wondering about Black geographies produced materially and imaginatively. And so the question was, how can mutual aid workers better utilize physical space? And I feel like anyone who's been involved in, creating mutual aid sites, like literal sites, can speak to their experiences about this.
So I work in tactical urbanism at Juxtaposition Arts, and it really started out as just a community engagement. We did interviews with community years ago, and then we started doing some more work downtown on 7th and Nicollet. The way we started was they were going to build a police station on 7th and Nicollet downtown, and they reached out to Juxta, like, what else could we do here? Instead, I think the downtown council, they reached out to us and said, what else can we do besides bring in another police station? We want to know something creative. And so I'm interested in doing that type of work. Juxta does, tactical urbanism is about changing physical spaces so that it meets the needs of the community, in a valuable, relevant manner. So I'm interested in working with Juxta to see what we can do in the future. If there is a possibility to create a space there, politically and physically change it, I'm down for that type of stuff. I feel like I'm maybe all over the place, but I'm it's exciting to know that that space could be even more, and we could still have all things that the community wants. Maybe not everybody's going to be happy, but I feel like it could be a space that's still a shrine and a healing space. It doesn't have to change. Our communities are pretty traumatized. And so as an organizer, I'm fucking traumatized and got PTSD around this here. So I'm not trying to I know the young people are ready to go into battle. I've seen on both sides how it affected our cities, our communities. And I just hope that we can focus on the creative part of it, and we can focus on visualizing how we can get what we need right there in that space. And everything doesn't, I get it. The government has always been violent towards us, right? It's violence every fucking where we turn. But our communities are already traumatized. We gotta be a little more strategic on how we fight for things. And so I don't know how we do that. I don't have all the answers, but I am saying that I'm willing to be there at the table, but I'm also trying to step back as an organizer who's been out here for a minute and just be you know what, whatever people do, it's everybody's turn to try to figure it out. I don't think a lot of us are tired, and a lot of us are tired of fighting. So I think, it's the younger generation's turn always in history, unfortunately, to figure out how to get through this shit. But I think that we all did it as young people. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm just excited to see what y'all are going to do with it. I already see how just taking up that space and occupying it and taking ownership of it and accountability of it, that is a beautiful thing. So just hoping that we can figure out how to also, just with the pandemic and what happened last year and what our communities already were struggling, right? And we got to figure out a way how to not fucking keep re-traumatizing each other, because it's not going to help sustain us. I see people get burnt out in this work, and I've said that we don't need 5 or 6 fucking rallies on the same day. Like, we don't. And could we be doing something better with that energy? Like, do we need hundreds of thousands of people to be out in the middle of the street, or do we need them marching into this office? Like, for real. Do we need 100,000 people to send emails, or do we need them out there throwing fucking milk at the police? Like, I'm just telling y'all, I've seen a lot of us really sometimes re-traumatize our own selves. And so that's what I see as someone who's been in this a little bit, at least a nice decade, which is not long. There's some elder people who've been seeing this shit for a while, right? But man, I'm tired already. And it's just been 10 years. I'm like, damn.
I kind of like want to talk a little bit about what Roxxanne was saying about kind of like, I think that is strategy is definitely a part of sustainability and like should be a larger discussion about sustainability. I don't think that, you know, everyone who is involved in this movement is always thinking strategically. I think that sometimes people do, and I don't want to downplay like the importance of like being in touch with your emotions in this kind of work and like, you know, letting that guide some of your decision making. But I think that there is a little bit of like, okay, like we have to like do something about this like right now. And like there are some things that I think happened over the summer that it was like, I wish that people would have just taken a minute and like thought about like, you know, really like what is the best way to like move forward here. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that
but that's
like,
hard in fight or flight, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, fight or flight. You know what I'm saying? We're all pumped up. We're
is obviously
really
useful in certain situations, but isn't the best way to respond all the time. And then the other thing is that like, I really want to build something intergenerational, because I feel like there has been this weird split between like the old people and the young people. I'm kind of in a weird middle ground, I guess. Like I'm still in my 20s, but like I don't feel like a young person. But like, yeah, I feel like we really need to be more intentional about intergenerational space, because the thing about the whole passing of the torch narrative is that it really ignores how like movement building is foundational and how like you don't have a young people movement without whatever came before. And I really feel, I don't know, I just really feel like that's something, that's a narrative that is maybe getting lost. And I think that like there's a lot of this like, oh, you know, like Gen Z, like it's their turn to like do, and it's like Gen Z, listen, Gen Z is doing great, like we're all doing our best here, like wonderful, but like let's not pretend that these are simply issues of generation. Like being racist or being bigoted is not an issue of generational politics. Like it's not a substitution for class analysis. It's not a substitution for critical race examination. Like it's not enough to just be young. Like you need to still be engaging with all parts of your community. And I think that that's something that we as organizers like need to be like really intentional about. And obviously I know Roxxanne wasn't saying that at all, but just it made me think of a lot of like
I work with everybody. That'd be a lot of young people. That's why I'd be like, y'all can have the space. Y'all can have it. I'm tired anyway. Like
for real.
Hey, all I'm saying is don't expect me to come in after y'all and tired yourselves out and had 10 fucking rallies in one day. There's like a competition of who could do the biggest rally. And I'm like, y'all can have it. If we ain't marching at home, I'm not out there trying to get shot by rubber bullets and shit. I just be feeling like we be doing too much to ourselves. And Northside already got bullets flying around here all the fucking time. I don't want to show up at this, it's supposed to be healing too. And that's why, like, I get it, but I'm also like, man, I'm not, y'all.
We need a diversity of tactics. And I think that that's something that is also not necessarily being held by everyone who is prominent in activist space. And I that's something that we have to get back to, I think.
Absolutely. Jay, I definitely agree with you 100%. Yeah, the need and us being, I'm assuming that well, I would say because I don't know that, myself being an ADOS, African descendant of a slave, I mean, that's really how we were able to transition. I will never forget, I had a meeting with the elder and I asked him about passing the torch. He said, there is no torch. That broke my heart. Like, what the hell you mean there is no torch, right? And so I don't know whether it was this misplaced trust or because he had the knowledge. I knew his activism history. Hence, I wouldn't even ask him to come to a table. But I do believe that there has to be, once again, this decolonization of our mindset in which we really had a village approach to things. And Jay, I feel a little bit offended when you say old people. So define old people. Are we talking about on the other side of what, right? But real talk, my oldest is 20. And so it's different ways that he moves that I just can't move. I'm 43. And there's different ways that I move that he can't. I just believe that the power force and the inclusiveness of it all makes us just like this powerful force that intergenerationally, and the wisdom and the swiftness and the strength that we can do together, man, is second to none. Like, it's needed. And our ancestors is reaching for that. They set us up for that. Roxxanne, you set the meeting up.
No, I'm sorry, sis. I wasn't saying to you. I was answering that question.
I just seen it.
I'm like, somebody said, what should we do? I mean, I don't know if people want to talk to the mayor or not. Do you? I feel like y'all have access to the mayor, so I'm confused a little bit. Like, do y'all want to talk to the mayor, or do y'all not want to talk to the mayor? I heard people don't give a fuck about what the mayor has to say. So I'm not really sure who the leaders are of the square, y'all. I'm gonna keep it real, but whoever is leading it, I just hope we keep each other safe. That's my thing right now.
There was just a meeting last week, and I know that a follow-up is coming. I know that there is a team that is working on that.
Yeah, the next meeting is March 6th.
Yeah, just a quick thing for all of our viewers. We are kind of getting into the question of what would we need to do in order to have a face-to-face with the mayor/governor in order to express concerns about the square. They also said, I think many of the folks opposed never set foot there, and hearing from those that may have some weight.
Well, first of all, the mayor don't talk to me since he was city council person. I mean, he'll talk to me, but he's not really feeling me like that. But I know I could get a meeting with the mayor. I just feel like a bunch of us could. So I don't know, is that really what's wanted? Or I don't know who's asking these questions.
There was just the question that came up in the chat, which was exactly, what Akoma spoke to.
Yeah, I think like Carmen was saying, that it's about the work, and not as much as the George Floyd Square, it's about our boots on the ground and us collectively getting together and doing the work. And we need to apply that social pressure to the mayor. We need to apply it in every angle and every way that we can. And it's one thing is never going to be enough. We got to hit them at all angles.
I mean, is the issue is, so what is there a plan with that? Like a plan to further grow that square? Is there?
When I've been to the meetings, there are several different organizers, and like Carmen was saying, and different committee leaders that have ideas, and they have things that they're putting in place that they're doing. There's different signatures they're out getting. There's different hashtags and stuff that they're mobilizing at different events. I know they're doing one on the 27th down there at the square. But I know for my group, where we just try to help and support is with that manpower and doing the work out here, and however we can support. And right now, trying
Do
to
you
help
let me
plan
know
with.
if you show up, or because I haven't seen it, but I haven't been on Facebook like that, and I haven't, you know, I'm not getting the emails. I know I'm on like one of them South Side, you know what I'm saying, call things that usually when you know when things are popping off, you know what I'm saying, that type of thing. But like, where is this information? Or
It's club meetings, sis. So that's how come it hasn't been a lot of publicity around it.
Yeah.
I do want to speak to that. It's a little bit past time. We're at 1:31, and I don't want to hold y'all any longer than you committed to. But are there, yeah, if there are any thoughts that folks want to end the panel on, or any messages that y'all want to give each other or to the audience?
I would just want to say thank you for having me here. I appreciate all the information that I've learned and that I'm gathered from all of you. It's certainly going to be a continuing learning process as we get through this year. And I know as Twin Cities Relief, we're babies and we're just learning how to kind of jump in. And we would love to learn from the Roxxanne and the Carmens and the Jays and the Sheffs of
y'all are doing
the
fine.
Mutual Aid.
Y'all are doing just fine. I'm very thankful to even be on the call to meet y'all and to finally see a lot of y'all doing this stuff. I mean, I was a baby raised out there too. I used to go to Central. I worked off of 38th. I mean, I used to be over there all the time, but it's been a lot happening, and I moved over north, and I'm from both. I love both areas. What happened over there affected us over here. So I would love to see some sort of north side, south side, you know, intentional come together, Twin Cities in general. So let me know, shit. I just might need to cut out because I'm tired, and I'm gonna say that, and I just want to be real about human shit. So, but thank y'all, and would love to hear more about what y'all are doing.
Thank you.
I'll take you up on that, Roxxanne.
We thank you, Roxanne. We be saying north side and south side like we Chicago. Y'all, we 5 minutes away. Literally. Stop
Yeah,
playing.
I know. Where you think I gotta get my
We're
tacos and shit?
away.
I gotta come
And
straight
it's
to
not
the
enough
south
Black
side.
people here for us to be disjointed. Come on, let's get the work done, y'all. Regardless zip code.
Well, y'all should see what's going on over here on the north side. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, yeah, I want to tap in, but I also don't want to burn out.
Absolutely.
Sheff or Jay, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also really grateful to have been here and learned from y'all. I think CTOOL jumped into mutual aid in a new way this year, and we have a question to ask ourselves of how we like incorporate mutual aid going forward strategically alongside with long-term movement building. And yeah, I've been grateful to learn from what y'all are doing to bring that back.
Yeah, this has been really great. It's been really cool to like get to meet a lot of other activists in the area, and like to me it's like so important for us to all be talking to each other and like to really be, I don't know, just like dialoguing about stuff and like the different problems in the different areas that we all kind of like inhabit. And so like I think this was a really great opportunity, and I hope to see many of you again. I'm sure I will. I'm surprised I actually haven't seen Roxxanne, because I also live in North, and like I work with TC4J a lot, and they all know you. I just had never like actually met you, so it was good to meet you.
Great. Thank you all again. I know all of the work that you're doing is really mobilizing people, expanding solidarity and building movements. So thank you so much. I know Peter just mentioned that keep Eastside Freedom Library in mind as a space, as a collection of resources, and as a bridge among generations, communities, and as a platform. Thank you all again. Thank you, Eastside, for allowing to host us. Yeah, this has been great.
Thank you so much again. And our captioner and ASL interpreters, y'all have been great too. And thank you for dealing with my last minute emails about this.
I want to thank Carla for her work on the tech. And thank you all for coming, and all the folks who tuned in and added their energy and their thoughts. Andrea and Akima, why don't you just say something about what you're working on that's coming up at Moon Palace? And
Yeah. So Andrea and I have been working on a series of free public programs. This one is one of them. We're doing 6 altogether, but basically what we're hoping to do out of everything that we've discussed here is really build an outdoor exhibition, and it's actually going to be opening up in May of 2021, and it's going to be in the open lot right outside of Moon Palace Books, kind of where the farmers market is located. We're going to have a mural there where South High School students come together and create a mural. We're going to be having lots of 2D art, and we're going to be having kind of an exploration of the history of mutual aid efforts within the Twin Cities. And we're going to use some quotes that were said today, because I think the knowledge that was shared today was so valuable to this movement building. But yeah, our project is called History for the Future. And yeah, we would love to see you all there and continue to participate with us. Did I miss anything, Andrea? I think that was it.
That's a great explanation. Yeah, the idea is that all of the stuff coming from the programming, and especially this discussion, will really inform how we think about mutual aid and how we want to think about the space that Moon Palace, that the lot next to Moon Palace will be used for the exhibition. And so, yeah, I will just leave it there, and thank you all again so much.